Call an ambulance, someone screamed as my husband collapsed beside the wedding cake tonight. My mother-in-law grabbed my arm and hissed, "Don't pretend to cry. You barely knew him." Guests stared. Cameras flashed everywhere. My name is Natalie Brooks, and I'm 34 years old. Before that night, my life was simple and quiet. I worked as a hospital administrative coordinator. It isn't a glamorous job, but it taught me discipline, patience, and attention to detail. Most days I sat behind a desk sorting medical records, approving forms, and helping nurses keep everything organized. People trusted me because I stayed calm even when the hospital felt chaotic. I grew up in a small apartment with my mom. She raised me alone and worked 2 jobs most of my childhood. She taught me that honesty matters more than money, and that patience can solve problems anger cannot. I never dreamed about luxury or big houses. I just wanted a peaceful life and a loving marriage. 2 years before the wedding, I met Daniel through a mutual friend. He was kind, thoughtful, and easy to talk to. But his family was very different. They were wealthy, polished, and proud of it. They treated me politely in public, but made it clear I didn't belong in their world. His mother loved reminding me that I worked in an office instead of running a company. I ignored those warnings because I believed love mattered more than status. I wasn't rich or glamorous, but I had something they didn't expect. Years of hospital work gave me a sharp eye for details. Looking back now, I realize that skill saved me when the truth finally surfaced later. If you've ever been judged because of your job or background, you probably know the feeling. People assume your worth based on where you came from. If that has happened to you, subscribe to this channel. Share your story in the comments too. I read them all. And before we go further, tap like and click hype. The wedding reception started beautifully. Music played through the ballroom speakers, glasses clinked, guests laughed and danced. The smell of fresh roses and expensive perfume filled the air. Daniel squeezed my hand while we greeted relatives and friends. For a moment, I thought everything would finally feel peaceful. Then, his mother stood to give a toast. She smiled at the crowd with that perfect smile she practiced in every photo. "Daniel has always deserved the very best," she said loudly. Then she glanced at me and added, "And we hope Natalie grows into that role." A few guests laughed nervously. Others avoided my eyes. My face burned, but I forced a smile. I told myself to stay calm. The cake cutting came next. Cameras flashed as Daniel held my hand and guided the knife through the white frosting. People cheered. Then suddenly, his fingers tightened around mine. Held my hand and guided the knife through the white frosting. People cheered. Then suddenly, his fingers tightened around mine. His face turned pale. "Daniel?" I whispered. He grabbed his chest and collapsed beside the table. Plates shattered on the floor. Someone screamed. Music stopped. "Call an ambulance!" a voice shouted. I dropped beside him and tried to check his breathing. My hospital training took over automatically, but his father shoved me aside. "Move!" he barked. His mother grabbed my arm hard enough to hurt. "Don't pretend to cry," she hissed. "You barely knew him." I stared at her in shock while paramedics rushed in minutes later. They tried everything, but after a few tense moments, one of them quietly shook his head. My husband was gone. The room felt silent, even though people were whispering everywhere. The celebration turned into confusion and suspicion instantly. That same night, I noticed the way his parents looked at me. Cold, accusing. A week later, I went through Daniel's things at our apartment. I opened his laptop and found a locked folder. Inside were emails that made my heart drop. Daniel believed someone in his own family might be trying to harm him. The first betrayal came quickly. 2 days after Daniel's death, I called his parents about funeral planning. His mother answered. Her voice was flat. "The family will handle it privately," she said. "You don't need to be involved." I felt my throat tighten. "I'm his wife," I said quietly. She paused before replying. "You were barely part of his life." The line went dead. The funeral happened 3 days later. I stood near the back of the chapel, alone. I could hear whispers behind me. One aunt leaned toward another and said loudly, "Funny how he dies the night she becomes his wife." My chest felt hollow hearing those words. They thought I married Daniel for money. They thought I was dangerous. I stayed silent and listened. That was when I started noticing strange details. His parents seemed nervous whenever anyone mentioned Daniel's work at the family company. They avoided questions. A few days later, the family lawyer contacted me. We met in a quiet office that smelled faintly of old paper and leather. He explained there might be a disputed clause in Daniel's will. "It's possible you won't inherit anything," he said carefully. I frowned. Daniel told me everything was already arranged. The lawyer shrugged politely. Families sometimes change plans. Something about that meeting felt wrong. That night, I opened Daniel's laptop again. I searched deeper into the folder. More emails appeared. One message Daniel wrote made my heart race. "If anything happens to me suddenly," up again. I searched deeper into the folder. More emails appeared. One message Daniel wrote made my heart race. "If anything happens to me suddenly, look into the company accounts." I stared at those words for a long time. Daniel had been worried, very worried. Over the next few days, I quietly researched the family business. Public records showed odd financial movements, transfers that didn't match the company's normal patterns. The family still treated me like a powerless outsider, but slowly I realized something terrifying. Daniel might have died because he discovered something dangerous. Working in hospital administration teaches you one important habit: document everything. Dates, records, signatures. That mindset guided me when I searched Daniel's files. I checked every folder, every backup, every cloud account. Hours passed while the quiet hum of my laptop filled the room. Finally, I found something new: a shared cloud drive Daniel had created months earlier. What they didn't know was that Daniel had already trusted me with access to it. Inside were dozens of documents: financial reports, internal emails, audio recordings. My hands shook as I opened the first recording. Daniel's voice filled the speakers. "I won't cover this up anymore," he said firmly. Another voice answered angrily. It was his father. The argument continued about money hidden inside the company, illegal transfers, false accounting. I listened to several recordings. Each one showed Daniel confronting his parents about hidden funds. Slowly, the truth formed in my mind. Daniel had discovered fraud in his own family business. He wanted to expose it. Then he died suddenly on our wedding night. My stomach twisted with a cold realization. His death might not have been natural. I knew I couldn't face his family alone. They had money and power. I needed someone who understood their history and the business world better than I did. That someone turned out to be Rachel, Daniel's cousin, the one the family always avoided mentioning. I found her number in an old contact list and called. We met in a quiet coffee shop 2 days later. The smell of roasted coffee beans hung thick in the air. Rachel listened while I explained everything. She didn't interrupt once. When I finished, she leaned back and sighed. "I knew something like this would happen eventually," she said. I frowned. "You suspected them?" She nodded slowly. Years earlier, she had questioned the company's finances and was pushed out of the business. "They called me disloyal," she said. Together, we examined Daniel's recordings and documents. Rachel understood the financial language better than I did. After hours of reviewing files, she pointed to several transfers. "These are illegal," she said quietly. "Very illegal." She connected me with a corporate investigator she trusted. Meanwhile, Daniel's parents kept pressuring me to sign legal papers. They said it would simplify the estate process. During one meeting, his mother leaned across the table and smiled coldly. "You'll never survive a legal fight with us," she said. I looked down at the papers, but said nothing. Because Rachel and I already had something stronger than threats: proof. Soon, the family scheduled a formal reading of Daniel's estate documents at their lawyer's office. Rachel glanced at me and asked, "Ready?" I nodded slowly. That meeting would be the moment everything changed. The lawyer's office was quiet the day of the meeting. A wall clock ticked steadily. Daniel's parents sat across the table, looking calm and confident. They believed I would surrender quietly. The lawyer opened a folder and began explaining the estate. Before he could continue, Daniel's mother sighed impatiently. "Let's resolve this quickly," she said. I raised my hand slightly. "Actually, I'd like to present something first." The lawyer hesitated, but nodded. I connected my phone to the small speaker on the table. Daniel's voice filled the room instantly. The recording played his argument with his parents about hidden funds. No one spoke while it played. Rachel placed printed financial documents on the table next to the speaker. "These match the recordings," she said calmly. I looked directly at Daniel's parents. My voice stayed steady. "Daniel wasn't investigating strangers," I said. "He was investigating his own family." The lawyer's eyes widened as he skimmed the papers. "These suggest serious financial crimes," he murmured. Daniel's mother stood up suddenly. "This is nonsense," she shouted. I shook my head slowly. "Daniel already sent copies of this evidence to authorities before the wedding," I said. The room went silent again. Panic flashed across their faces for the first time. "You're lying," his mother snapped. I met her eyes calmly. "No," I replied. "Daniel made sure the truth would come out if anything happened to him." The lawyer cleared his throat and stood. "I'm obligated to report this immediately," he said. In that moment, their plan collapsed completely. The room where they expected to control everything became the place where their secrets finally surfaced. Authorities started investigating the company within days of that meeting. Rachel kept me updated while the case developed. Piece by piece, the truth became clear. Daniel had been trying to clean up the business before we married. He wanted a fresh start for our life together. His death might never be fully explained, but the evidence he left behind ensured the corruption would not stay hidden. One evening, Rachel hugged me outside the courthouse. "He'd be proud of you," she said softly. I smiled sadly. I decided to walk away from the company and the family completely. I kept my quiet job at the hospital and rebuilt my life slowly. The wedding night tragedy changed everything for me, but it also showed me who Daniel truly was. They thought I was just the quiet bride, but sometimes the quiet ones are the ones who finish the truth someone else started. If you've ever discovered something shocking about people you trusted, you know how heavy that moment feels. Betrayal inside a family can shake everything you believe. If you've experienced something like that, share your story in the comments. Subscribe if you want to hear more stories like this, and click hype so others who need to hear it can find it too. Did this story hit home? Let me know by liking the video and sharing your thoughts in the comments. Click hype to help this story reach others who have felt the same pain. Your support truly matters, and every comment helps keep stories like this alive.